We'd like to start with a pledge and a prayer. Shauna Warnick from the school board will give us the pledge, and Stephanie Ashcraft, local resident, will give us the prayer.
All right, will you rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity that we have to be here today, to live in a land where we have such a boundless amount of freedom and the ability to voice our opinions and to be able to have civil dialogue amongst each other. And we're grateful for these officials, these elected officials, and for their willingness to serve and for the sacrifices that they make to represent us. And we ask that we can have thy spirit here with us, that we can be civil and we can be able to learn what is happening in our great state. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. For those of you who might not know our format, it's kind of a town hall format. You'll see in the middle of your table there's a piece of paper and a pen, and if you have a question for anybody up there, just write it down. If it's for them specifically, write their name on the top and then just hold it up and I'll come and get it and deliver it to them. Each legislator will start with some introductions. They can kind of introduce themselves and some of the bills that they're working on. And then we'll start answering questions clear until it gets back to about 8:30, 8:40, and then they can give a wrap up. And then afterwards, if they have time, they'll stay and answer individual questions. So with that, as you're thinking of the questions that you would like to ask, we're over halfway through the legislative session. Time goes by quickly. Lots is going on up there, and I know that you're concerned about some of the pieces of legislation or supportive of that. Because we are privileged to have our Lieutenant Governor here with us, we would like to give her time at the beginning to just talk about her role and anything else that she would like to let us know before we start with the introductions of our legislature.
It's great to be here this morning. It's good to see so many familiar faces. Did we do this did you guys do this at all last year? Did we skip last year? Oh, we did. Okay. So I came to these every year when I was in the legislature, when I served in the state senate. I'm Deidre Henderson, Lieutenant Governor. I live just a mile away here in town, and was very privileged to represent this area in South Utah County in the Utah State Senate for 8 years prior to being elected as Lieutenant Governor. Now Mike McKell holds the seat that I once held, and I told him that if he messes up, I'm coming after his seat. So he's done a pretty good job. So we've only had to veto one of his bills so far. So we'll see how he fares this legislative session. When in 2020, when then Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox, who was running for governor at the time, he asked me right after the legislative session ended. He asked me to join him as his running mate. Now, I was up for re-election to the state senate, and I couldn't run for both positions. I had to make a choice, and so ultimately I chose to take a pretty significant risk and join Spencer on his ticket. And I told my mother, who lives in Springville, I said, "Hey, Mom, just so you know, Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox has asked me to join him on his ticket and to run for lieutenant governor." And she said, "What's a lieutenant governor?" So I had to explain what the role of lieutenant governor is. And for those of you who may not know, I work with the governor very closely, and I have several statutory duties. One of them, the biggest one probably, is I am the chief election officer of the state of Utah. And I don't run, the lieutenant governor does not run elections, but the lieutenant governor has direct and general supervisory authority over elections, and your counties run elections. I also oversee municipal incorporations, notary publics. I think sometimes I feel like the lieutenant governor's spot is just where they throw stuff they don't know what else to do with. Apostilles, authentications. I think I'm the keeper of the Great Seal of the state of Utah, which is really cool, I think. I'd actually been lieutenant governor for a few months when I said, well, if I'm keeper of the seal, where is the seal? And nobody knew. Nobody had any idea. So I went on this little treasure hunt to try to find the Great Seal of the state of Utah, and I found it. So if anybody ever goes to the Capitol building, in the basement, there's a presentation room, and it's got some displays. And in there is this plexiglass box that has a very cool, I don't know if it's a lion or a dragon. Have you guys seen it? It's this old, big, huge, it's the seal, and it's, got a lever, and you can, so there's a sign above it that says, the Great Seal of the state of Utah, is on display here unless being used by the lieutenant governor. So now my goal in life is to figure out a reason to pull that dang thing out and use it, because I'm the only one in the entire state who can. So if I don't do that while I'm lieutenant governor, I think I will have failed.
Bring it down here.
Yeah. So I also, one of the other statutory duties that I have literally says, basically anything the governor asks the lieutenant governor to do, which is pretty significant. A lot of people don't know that in Utah, the lieutenant governor is also the secretary of state. So a lot of the duties that I have deal with are foreign relations, diplomacy, when we have ambassadors and consuls general and other dignitaries from foreign countries that come to the state of Utah. I meet with them very often. And one of these days I'll count up how many of those meetings I've had. It's a lot. And it's a fun part of my job. I also oversee tribal relations with our 8 federally recognized Native American tribes in the state of Utah. And there's a bunch of other stuff that we do. It's a real honor and a privilege to be in this position to represent you and now all the 3.3 million people in the state of Utah. And really grateful for these gentlemen up here and the wonderful service that they provide to you. I want you to know that they are really good representatives of the people. They listen to their constituents, they care deeply, they're passionate about their issues, and they do you a lot of credit on Capitol Hill. You should be proud of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. We appreciate your service to us, continued service to us in our area down here, and we are so grateful that you're here today. With that, we would like to start over here with Representative Welton. Give us an update on where your bills are and what you're working on, and then we'll just go down the line. And then remember, all of you who have a question, please write it down and just hold your hand up and I'll come pick it up.
My name is Doug Welton. I represent, for those who weren't here before, I represent Payson, Santaquin, Goshen, Genola, Elk Ridge, county areas, Eagle Valley, Cedar Fort, Cedar Valley, I forget, Fairfield. Anyway, so I'm excited this year. Last year, I talked about how it was my first session and everything was online and we didn't get to see a lot of people. This year, one of my favorite things, and I may have mentioned this last time we were here, is the ability to meet young people who are engaging in the political process. To see them up at the Capitol and seeing how their government works and that their officials are accessible is really kind of a cool thing to me as someone who teaches social sciences and teaches kids to be engaged in the real world. One of the highlights of my week is I had several former students who found an issue that they were excited about. It was a Utah Lake issue, and they were up at the Capitol, and there was like 7 or 8 of them, and they were standing up for something that they believed in. And so that was kind of a fun and rewarding thing, issues aside, and whether I agree or disagree, it was just fun to see them involved in the process and using their voice for something that they believed in. I'm kind of big on local control and trying to make most decisions, as many decisions as possible at the local level. I think that's the most responsive level. I think it's the easiest level to change if you dislike what's happening. And to that end, I've kind of made my votes kind of echo that. Last time I was here, I talked about an education sandbox bill. I've worked on that a little bit since, and I'm over time. So I've got education sandbox bill I talk about. We have my recycling bill that was just numbered last night on transparency that I can talk about later, and I will move on. I need to look over here. That's where the timer is.
All right, thank you. My name's Norm Thurston. I'm a representative. I live in Provo. I represent South Provo and North Springville. I've learned the code words. I represent the Westfields and the people who live behind McDonald's. So if you're from Springville, you know exactly where that is. I forgot. I also represent the Spanish Fork Airport and the jail. So if you live at the airport or the jail. All right. Just a couple quick things. Something fun happened. Oh, by the way, I sit next to Doug on the House floor, and we vote together 98 or 99% of the time. And when we don't, we always have a great conversation about that. There's a fair amount of good-natured teasing that goes on when we're not the same color on the board. So one thing that's interesting, this doesn't happen very often. So I have a bill that I'm working on, which is a bipartisan bill. So it's sponsored by Democrat, Representative Pitcher from Salt Lake City, and I'm the co-sponsor. And we've been working on this together. I just want to tell you what it does so you can kind of realize that bipartisanship is a possibility. This is an issue that came to me from constituents who have diabetes and who are concerned that if they get pulled over by law enforcement because they're having a diabetic emergency, that might not go well because law enforcement might think that something else is happening. And so what that does is it allows a driver to have a code put on their license plate that said, "Dear law enforcement, the person driving this car may have a medical or communications problem, so when you walk up to the door, it might not be what you think it's going to be." And our intent is just to save lives, essentially, because if it's a medical emergency and not a DUI, law enforcement needs to behave differently and be able to get ambulance on scene and take care of them. So, all right, I can see that from here. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's good to be here, and it's wonderful to have our Lieutenant Governor with us. I was looking on social media last night, and Representative Thurston reminded me that there was a pickleball tournament with the House and the Senate and the Governor. And that may seem like something minor, but one of the cool things in Utah is we genuinely like each other, and we get along and we work well together. And it's always nice to work with people that we all care about. I think we've got the finest delegation in the state. I like everybody we work with, but we've got great people that we work with, and I think that is incredibly important. That contention you see in Washington, D.C. is not something you see in our state capitol. This last 3 weeks, we have been setting our budgets. We did our base budgets. So I chair Business and Economic Development sub-appropriations, which means at the end of the day, I get to make recommendations to our executive appropriations committees. So all of our sub-appropriation committees at this point have looked at funding requests. I had way too many. I had over $500 million in requests that came through my committee with lots of really, really brilliant ideas, but a lot of things we probably shouldn't be funding as a state, and we got to prioritize that and tried to do it in a way that didn't upset those that had some ideas that weren't as good. But that's what we've been working on. The legislature is a marathon. I think we're sitting at mile 16 right now. We have 3 more weeks to go, and some of the scary stuff happens in the end. So keep an eye on us, and we're up there working hard. But thank you for being here this morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephen White, representative for House District 65, and that represents Springville, Mapleton, and Spanish Fork. And it's just a privilege to be able to be here with you this morning. Thanks for coming out early and missing Saturday morning cartoons or skiing or anything like that going on with your families. One thing that I have just been inspired, is this being my very first legislative session, is the involvement of everyone in the state pulling together and work together. And so being able to work with Lieutenant Governor and these great men here and other colleagues, the full-time staff, the legislative research and general counsel team, and all of us pulling together has been just truly inspiring. It's different from what we're seeing out there on social media and out in the news. And that really Utah is a great example for our nation. So it's been a privilege to be able to serve. My wife Roxanne, who's here, we're on a date this morning. We haven't seen each other very much the last 3 weeks. And so thanks for joining our date this morning. We have 5 children, and that's the best part of life. I have the opportunity to serve on 3 committees. It's the Public Education Appropriations Committee. That has one of the largest budgets in the state, about $6.6 billion just for public public education in the state. Also criminal justice and law enforcement, as well as workforce development. Some bills that I'm working on is target shooting regulations, clarifying some issues out there between us that like to go out and shoot and target shoot, and with sparking wildfires, so working on that, as well as Emergency Management Commission and the Search and Rescue Council as well. So thanks for being here. Look forward to being able to visit with all of you.
Good morning, everybody. It's an honor and pleasure to be with you. I've spent a life getting up early, so I love to get up at 4:30 in the morning and just watch the sun come up. And so mornings are good for me. Jeff Burton, represent the bulk of Spanish Fork, Salem, Woodland Hills. We go out to Lake Shore. Somebody reminded me the other day there is a Leland. Anybody from Leland? So I represent you. Just to what Senator Mike McKell said, it's wonderful to work with people that you respect, and all of us have been in positions where we don't. And I just want to say these people up here are really striving to do well. We're human, we make mistakes, but we care deeply about you, and I think the reason we're all serving is because we want to make a difference in a positive way. So what I'm working on, I have a passion for civics education, and y'all, I think if you were here last time, I talked about that a little bit. And I believe that it starts at the university level, and so that's what I'm working on. Programs to export good quality civics to help our teachers that are going to go out and teach civics to know what to teach, and then to help them understand how to develop curriculum that makes sense and that covers our basic documents. And then finally, I'm the vice chair of the Criminal Justice Law Enforcement Committee. One of the most important bills we're going to hear in the next few days is on the death penalty repeal. That will be on Monday, so you might want to stay tuned to that. And I'm working on some COVID cleanup bills, and I've got a background in disaster response and recovery, and I'm working on a few things in that area. So thanks.
We have a few questions here. And then again, if you have a question.
This one I wish I had a good answer for, but it says, is this the year the Payson Main Street interchange gets funded? Representative McKell, no. We're working on it. We've been working on it. I've got a meeting that I'm trying to set up with Representative Schultz and UDOT to see what we can do. The problem is it's such a big dollar amount, and so
Tell them how much it is.
$160 million. Now, there is a belief from some people I talk to that sometimes UDOT overinflates budgets when they don't want to address it, and so we're going to see if we can dial down into what the actual numbers are. And we're also going to see if we can get MAG to break that down into smaller pieces that we can proportion out. The good news, we did get $5 million for Payson Main Street. That was a state street that was turned over, and so they're going to start work on that here. But as of right now, we're still working on that and efforting to get that done as we pull some transportation bills off the top of the board. That does move the project up. So even if it is a large number, hopefully in the next couple of years it gets funded.
Okay, the question I have is related to elections. It's from me. So this is apparently the year of gigantic elections reform bills. We have a ton of elections bills this year. And they're in various areas. There's things like citizen participation, there's transparency, there's security, there's blah, blah, blah. You just name it, there's bills on everything. And I anticipate that we do have some progress that we can make on some of these areas to make our elections more secure and to increase citizen participation. But we have a lot of people who are proposing, can I just say wacky bills?
Yes, you can.
Wacky bills that don't really do what they think they will do. And so it's going to be a very interesting process for us to kind of channel the stuff that really does matter, the stuff that will make the elections more secure and have more transparency, and weed out the stuff that is just sort of I don't know what you'd call it, the ideas that are floating out there that really don't have that meaningful impact. And that's one of the hardest things that we have to do, is filter through. Everybody recognizes there are problems, but you have to filter out which solutions are actually solutions and which are just kind of ideas that are out there in the wind. And that's what I think we're going to be doing a lot of that next week. We've started down that path, and we're, like Representative Burton said, we make mistakes, but that's why we have the Senate. They'll bail us out on all the mistakes that we make. So they'll fix that when it gets over there. But we are working through those elections bills, and everybody seems to be excited about it. So it's great. I'm glad that you're interested in it, but just keep an eye on it. Help us be rational and calm and do stuff that's based on reality and that really will work. We want to do stuff that really will work.
Okay, I've got a good question, and this is something I think is a lot of people are thinking about this. Please explain how House Bill 232 will benefit us. Why are conservatives who stand for smaller government adding a fourth level of local government? This is the Utah Lake Authority bill. I'm going to keep reading the question. Do you support the HB 232? Yes. Do you support implementation where voters have no direct election power over an authority with taxing authority? And that's simply not accurate. However, I'm happy to talk whoever has this question afterwards. I do support House Bill 232. If we were to do a random poll in this room and the question was, is the state of Utah, is the local community doing a good job managing Utah Lake? If we're all being honest, I'm seeing some heads already shaking. No, we're not. We have not done a good job managing Utah Lake. So there is a bill that would create an authority that would have direct oversight over the lake. So I've served on the Utah Lake Commission. I've served there for a long, long period of time. The problem is we have lots of good ideas, but we don't have any kind of authority to deal with a lot of those ideas. So I served as the chair of Natural Resources Appropriations in the House for a long period of time. We dealt with carp removal, we dealt with Phragmites, but we simply have not been able to address full water quality on Utah Lake. I think an authority would be very, very helpful. I think the question's kind of loaded when we say, as conservatives who stand for smaller government, I think providing oversight in Utah Lake is not adding government. I think that's our job. We actually own Utah Lake as a state. I think we need to make sure that we manage Utah Lake. What can we do? What is the legislature doing today? I think one of the important things that you should be aware of is the ARPA. ARPA is the American Rescue Fund. We actually have $30 million in that fund that will directly impact Utah Lake. Of that money, we are upgrading our sewer systems to try to improve water quality, as well as a DEQ grant for non-point source pollutants into the lake through an ag grant program. That's coming. But to answer the question, do I support HB 232? Absolutely. I think everybody in this room that wants to see change and real oversight of Utah Lake should support it as well. Thank you.
Okay, this question, Lieutenant Governor Henderson, how is the promise of a guaranteed chain of custody fulfilled with mail-in ballots when they're surrendered to the U.S. Postal Service? In almost all states, there are examples of destroyed and lost ballots. And I would love to see that information. I haven't seen that, but I would definitely be interested in looking at that. For a long, long time, right, we trust the Postal Service to deliver mail. We put money in the mail, we put our bills in the mail, and so there are already federal laws surrounding the Postal Service. However, we recognize that not everybody wants to put their ballots in the mail, and for whatever reason, if the service has gotten slow over the years, or you don't trust it, or whatever the reason. So we have secure ballot drop boxes that you can put your ballots in as well, or you can deliver it to your county clerk's office, or you can vote in person on election day. There are a lot of ways that you can vote with your mail-in ballot if you do not like or trust the United States Postal Service. Also, we know we have a unique identifier on every ballot envelope. So we know when we send you a ballot. You also can know when we send you a ballot because you can get onto the elections website and sign up to receive notifications. And at any moment you can get on there, even if you haven't signed up, and get on and see if a ballot has been mailed to you, so you know you're expecting it. Or once you send your ballot in, you will know when your county clerk has received your ballot. You will know when they've opened your ballot and processed your ballot. You will know when they've counted your ballot. And so we have a lot of processes in place to make sure that those ballots are secure, that they're safe, and then there's some responsibility on you as the individual voter to make sure that you're tracking your information. A lot more to say on that if you want. This other question really quick. Oh my gosh, stop. Okay. But where do you stand on ranked choice voting? I'm kind of agnostic on it. There are some policy issues surrounding this Doug Welton, Representative Welton, has a bill that is fixing some things. I hope it gets a hearing. Norm. It will be on there Tuesday. Okay, good. But the big expansion of ranked choice voting, it looks like that bill has died. So it's not going to happen at least not this year.
The question is, what do you think about HB 331, the Hope Scholarship Program? Have programs like this been done in other states? Is this good for students or harmful to education in Utah? This is a great question because this bill just arose this last week. The Hope Scholarship, HB 31, has a long history, and the underlying reasons for all of this has previously been explained historically in the state as school vouchers, which I think many of us are involved in and have seen it in the past. So that has a long history. The school voucher piece of it is really a passionate issue. There's strong feelings on both sides of this as well. As I've started looking into the language of this text, this bill this last week, there are the arguments for it, that there's the advantages that it provides choice and it provides flexibility for students and for families. And then on the other side of it, looking into it, there are concerns about the accountability of taxpayer dollars and also the transparency of these funds that we all pay into as well. So there are aspects on both sides. As I'm looking into it right now, I have some initial concerns about it, primarily with the accountability of our taxpayer dollars going towards education. But I know that though there are many in this room that know much more about this. We have our superintendent and school board members who live and breathe this on a daily basis. But right now, and so I'm looking and working and talking with them as well as everyone, but right now I have some initial concerns about this, primarily for the accountability of our taxpayer dollars. And so as this proceeds forward in hearings and things, please let me know what you're thinking about so I can represent your concerns and your recommendations as well.
Okay, I got the softballs question. It was, why did you go into politics? And I'll tell you, I spent my life in a uniform, and I never dreamed of being a politician. But several people I respected said, hey, you need to run. And so the last day I could file, I went and filed for Mike McKill's previous seat. And I'm so glad I did. I mean, the bottom line is we do it for love, not for money in Utah. And it's all about service, and it's all about, we all have concerns for the future. As we grow, as we get more population here, we've got to be very careful about our long-term planning and what we do to maintain the quality of life here in Utah. So we care, and that's why we do this. And so that's that answer. And then the other question was, real quick, what are your thoughts on House Bill 257? It's the bill is public prosecutor modifications by Kay Christopherson. He's also a Utah County representative. And the question is, do you think it'll pass? And so we're always concerned about criminal justice in the state of Utah, as you know, with this death penalty repeal bill. There are a lot of other bills out there. I've read this bill. I think it's a pretty solid bill, and I do think it will pass. But that's the answer to that question. Thanks.
All right, there's been one here that's for all of you because it was brought up by Representative Burton. There are several of you have gotten something similar individually, so when it's your turn, answer your question. But what is your stance on the death penalty repeal? So we can just go, they want to know from all of you. This is yours specifically.
Jump in. Let's go through.
Yeah, I'm a no.
Let me jump in. I'm a no as well. Let me tell you why. There are crimes that are so heinous that we should not pull it off the table. Here's the other problem logistically. Does the death penalty work? No. And if a prosecutor, we have this argument that it's a false promise to families. If a prosecutor actually says somebody's going to be executed, they're not doing their job. They probably will never be executed. The problem with the bill to repeal it, just logistically, I want you to think about it. I'm 43 years old. And you've got, and I'm going to go back to why that matters. So here's your option now: life without parole, or you can plead to 45 to life. Okay, I'm 43. I'd be almost 90 years old if I was facing that charge. There are some people in this room that are older than me. So what incentive is there to plead down? So I got life without parole, or prosecutor trying to get a plea can plea me now to 45 to life. So 90 years old. Am I gonna take that deal? No. I'm gonna litigate that every single time. I think the current proposal forces us to litigate more and more cases. I think it costs us more money in the long run. So I am a solid no. I don't like the bill. I think logistically, whether we're going to do the death penalty or not, I think the bill itself takes a really bad turn.
Legislators answer this.
Okay, I'll go because I'm on the vice chair of that committee that's going to be hearing the bill on Monday. I'm a solid no for a variety of reasons. I think, many argue that the death penalty is not a deterrent. I think it is. I think it's also been used as leverage. We know in the Cache County case where many times these perpetrators will not tell families where they buried the bodies. What a horrible thing to go through as a family. And often that's used to get information out of these perpetrators to give families a little bit of closure. So I don't think that it's the right message to send. I got a question, what are the nuances we may not have thought about with the death penalty repeal bill? And I just think it sends the wrong message to the criminal element. I think it sends the wrong message to anybody who's into law enforcement and law and order. So, of course, we have all thought about the state committing this act of the death penalty, but more importantly, I think the nuance here is we need to go from the top down and review all the death penalty cases that are out there. The new DNA evidence makes it possible for us to make sure that we don't have people that are not guilty on death row. And so I think that needs to be done, but I think it would be way too much to repeal the death penalty at this point. So I'm flat against it.
Thank you for the question. This has been one of those that have been weighing heavy on my mind the last couple of weeks because I too serve on the same committee with Representative Burton, and this is coming on Monday at 4 o'clock, and you can all tune in if you're not there physically, be able to watch it online and to be able to hear this hearing. I am one that has not publicly come out to be able to say my position at this point because I've intentionally wanted to be able to look at this objectively and to be able to go in and really inform to this important vote. During the last couple of weeks, I have met with prosecuting attorneys, met with Attorney General's office. I've talked with families and victims. I have talked to people on both sides of the issue and being able to hear their compelling arguments and their reasons and their rationales for what they're feeling on both sides of this issue. I've also looked at the Supreme Court cases. I've looked at the history of the death penalty in the United States and specifically here in the state of Utah. Have read all of the cases which are horrific and horrible that have happened to individuals and families here in the state. And so being able to look at this from an informed, objective stance of going in, of being able to make an informed decision. I also really have appreciated all of the constituents in House District 65 who have reached out to me and have talked to me, have come and met up at the Capitol, who've emailed and texted me as well. The majority of the feedback that I'm receiving from House District 65 is that they are in favor of remaining and keeping the death penalty. And so that's the feedback I'm receiving from constituents, but I'm looking at this objectively and wanting to go in to hear this important hearing. It will likely last probably a couple of hours, and being able to have many different people come in to be able to testify and be able to explain. And so that's where I'm at right now. And so I'm continuing to do this, especially over this weekend, as some important decisions need to be made.
So I'm going to buck the trend here, and I'm going to say I'm a tentative yes on this. And it's a hard issue. This is something that I've moved throughout my life from going like absolutely death penalty. In fact, we should use it more often. But as I've gotten older and I've looked into cases and I've looked at the institutions and things like that, I don't entirely trust government to get it right all the time. And if government can't get it right all the time, that means this is the one piece that's irreversible. You can't go back and undo the death penalty. And to that end, the Supreme Court has a lot of protections in place, and one of the reasons why it lasts so long and why it takes 20 plus years is because it is final. Like, you don't get do-overs on this. Now, we do have technology that's better. We have better DNA information and things like that. But it's a hard one, and I understand. I've talked a lot to my law enforcement friends, and they are very much in favor of this for many of the reasons that Senator McKell stated and Burton, and I understand those. And so I'm not a hard yes, but I do worry about that. I also worry about when we ask someone else to kill someone else, like what it does for a dehumanizing effect for that person, particularly those who say, this guy is really bad, I want to do it. There's a concern there for me. It's a heavy subject, and I do worry about, there's some internal things that I worry about too that have been brought to me, like what do you do with somebody who's on death row and there's no recourse for them if they kill somebody in prison? And so there are some things to think about that could sway my thoughts, and I appreciate Representative White who's taken the position of saying, I don't know, and I want to make sure that I really understand this issue fully. So I do need to do a little bit more research on that, but that's kind of where I'm leaning right now, if I'm being honest.
So I got a question that goes along with this, is why is it exigent now that the death penalty be addressed? Well, this is my 8th session. This is, I think, the 3rd or 4th time in 8 years that we've had this bill come up, which is partly why I know that I'm a no, because nothing's really changed. I mean, I understand if you haven't been through this before, you have to figure out where you are. But there's something else that happened. There's 3 things. One is that the sponsors has announced that, I think he's announced that he's retiring. So a lot of legislators, in your very last session, you want to do something big to leave a legacy. That's A. But we've also had 2 county prosecutors that have come out very publicly saying that they will never pursue the death penalty against anybody. And so that has caused us to have this conversation about, well, if you're Sim Gill in Salt Lake County and you say you're never going to pursue the death penalty, why do we even have it? Or maybe we just need a new county prosecutor. I don't know, one of those 2 things. But that's forced this into the county attorneys have forced this into the public discussion, because they are now taking position saying that they will not use this tool. And so that's forced the conversation. So that's why it's back again. But it's not new. It's an ongoing question.
Do any of you have other outstanding questions that you need to answer?
Yeah, so question I have is, how do we as a state help ensure appropriate curriculum without undue regulation that won't really help anyway? So that's obviously been a hot topic here, HB 234, SB 114. There's a lot of concern about what's happening in the classroom. I've got a couple of thoughts. I'm an educator, and I might have a different view on this. I teach high school, and so there's certainly something about age-appropriate education, conversations that you would have at one level you wouldn't have at different levels. I teach current issues, I teach debate, I teach philosophy, and in all of those classes there's an idea that you want to engage in ideas, and we talk about critical thinking, and you can't have critical thinking if you have a whitewashed scenario that you can talk about. Like if there's nothing on the other side to talk about, then there's no development of your critical thinking skills. That being said, let me just talk a little bit about what's happened over the last year. There's a lot of down things about the COVID pandemic. One of the good things is that as a result of going online for at least one term in Nebo School District, and then having hybrid systems, is nearly everything is on an online management system. So any assignment that your kid has to do is already posted online for you to say. Now, are there sidebar conversations that happen? Sure, there might be some sidebar conversations. I've always thought as a parent, my job in education was to be a partner with the teachers, and I talk to my kids and I find out what's going on and I have those conversations with my kids. That's something that's really easy to do. There's also a lot of studies out there that show that 80% of student learning actually happens outside the classroom. 80% of student learning, and that, by the way, that crushed me as a teacher. I'm like, wait, I only have this much effect? What am I doing? But that means that a lot of their learning is coming from their interactions with their peers, their interactions with in the home, and what they watch on TV, and all sorts of places. Like what happens between the classroom actually carries a little, or in the halls of the classroom actually oftentimes does a little bit more than what I teach in a classroom. And so I think it's important. I think there's also policies in place already. Let me just talk about another one recently. There was a reading that came up on iReady recently that happened in Nebo School District. There was some question about whether it was kind of leaning towards some of these ideas that you see in critical race theory. And the parent was concerned, and so rightly she called up the school district And the school district took a look at it and they immediately removed it because they said, you know what, that's questionable enough that this does not apply. And so the process worked where parents get involved with the district and there is that open and that public communication piece. The other thing that I found out as I dug into this is the iReady curriculum associates or that provide that content, they know what Utah's laws are and they had actually flagged this in November and December to be removed. And it had been removed from all content except for 7 kids who had started the module already. So once the module had been started, then you have to go through the module before it resets. But they had already pulled that content, and so 99% of our kids didn't get that because they are regularly reviewing their curriculum to make sure that it fits with Utah laws and Utah standards. Long story short is, I think, parent involvement. Just talk to your teachers and talk to them and say, hey, what's going on? I've got some questions. I heard this happened. And have that conversation with your teacher, and then everything else is already online and available for you.
All right, I'm going to jump in. I want to do a quick follow-up to House Bill 257. This is one Representative Burton talked about. I'm going to be the Senate sponsor of that bill. We actually have a substitute. It's a consensus substitute. I've been very, very concerned with lack of prosecution. I'm not a hard-nosed guy. Everybody needs to go to jail. But what we've been seeing, especially in Utah County, is we are taking felony cases and we've been trying those in justice court. So the original House Bill 257 fixes that issue. There's been a little bit of contention. So there's a substitute bill, and it simply deals with that issue. So moving forward, and there's actually broad consensus with all the prosecutors in the state except one, that felony prosecutions should happen in district court. You can always plea a felony down to a misdemeanor, but that should not happen at a justice court level. So I'm excited to see that bill move forward. I've got two questions. They're both related to, can you talk about the rule change on media access? What are the issues, parameters of the bill regarding not allowing the press to access the Senate and House chambers? That's been a little contentious, to say the least. That's been in the press a little bit. I have a rule change that I've worked on with my Senate colleagues. I was asked to help find a solution. So 2 parts to that rule. So rule number 1 is if the press wants to access to the dais, they've got to get permission from the chair first. So I can't figure out for the life of me why the media is losing their minds. Yes, so Norm says I need to tell him what the dais is. So where we're sitting, from right there to right there would be the dais. So the press can be anywhere else in the room at any time. But if they want to actually put a camera behind us, they've got to just have the chair say that. How that limits public discourse or public access, to me, is a mystery. Over the last 2 years, we've done more to provide access than we've ever done in the entire history of the state. Every meeting is streamed. During the debate with Utah Tech University, we had 80 people that got online and commented. You see our cameras right there today. That is not restricted in any way whatsoever. In the Senate, we have 2 really small committee rooms on the second floor on the wings to the north and the south. And there are times it is so packed that it is hard to move through. So that's the first part. I heard that they need to be behind us for artistic presentation and a lot of different weird discussions. But truthfully, we need to be able to do our work. Doing our work, we need to be able to move freely. The second part has been a little more contentious. We do have some restricted areas where all of us have a key card to get in and out. Unfortunately, security is different today than it was years ago. I had Debbie Bruce from KSL. She says, Senator, in 1990 we could move about freely on the floor of the legislature. And I don't think there's a single person up here on the dais today that wouldn't like to go back to 1990. Since I served in the Capitol, we literally had somebody put an AR-15 on the floor of the rotunda. This last year when we had riots and protests, one of the first states the Washington Post reported on threats to a state capitol was the Capitol in Salt Lake City, Utah. We have legitimate and very, very significant threats. I can promise you in 1990, the lieutenant governor did not have security following her around. And that happens today because the threats we face are very, very real. So we do media availability every single day behind the floor. That happens. But what the bill does is it's simply, I can bring media back at any time. They can reach out to us at any time. But there are some restricted areas behind the public area where for security reasons we do that. I know I'm out of time, but one of the things that's National Conference of State Legislatures has done a full analysis of state by state by state. That policy is right in line with other states. It's in line with the United States Capitol. It's far less restricted than the United States Capitol, and it's far less restricted than the courts. So great question, and just remember the dais right there. Get permission to put a camera right there. You can be right where Carrie's at, you're totally fine, but where Doug's at, you're not.
Okay, my question is, what is blockchain and what does it mean for election security? Is Utah using or considering blockchain? So I imagine whoever wrote me this question could probably explain this a lot better than me. I'm not definitely a pro of blockchain, but it's basically a digital way of recording information in a public ledger. It's decentralized. It's used most, I guess, famously or prominently in cryptocurrencies. And if my husband were here, he would go on and on because he loves this stuff and that's all he ever talks about. And it's great. But it can be used in elections and to a very limited degree it is used. Utah County, I don't know if Utah County uses, I don't know if other counties do, just for our military and overseas voters to be able to access, their ballot and vote for election. It's not used widespread. I'm not sure. I don't know that the jury's still out on whether the technology is there yet to have that be a method for everybody to use while voting, and we certainly wouldn't recommend moving that direction unless we were absolutely certain that it is entirely secure and can't be hacked and whatnot. So it is something. In fact, I had a senator in my office the other day who wanted to run a bill to form a task force to look into this for the future use in Utah elections, and I encouraged him to not run a bill to form a task force to look into this, but we can look into it anyway. Too many task forces, too many commissions, and I chair most of them, so it's, well, anyway. Thanks.
We both got a question here. We'll tag team if that's okay.
Sure,
The question is, where do you stand on photocop? I mean, basically, we can't face our accuser. So this is a good question. I just learned about this last week. Here's my little story experience with photocop. A few years ago, I was in a foreign country, and lo and behold, when I got home, I got a souvenir photo of me from the country doing something I shouldn't have been while I was driving. I didn't even know. So when I got the ticket from the country, I was like, man, I don't like photocop. What did I do? I didn't know I had made a mistake. So that is my experience with this. I need to learn more about photocop and what it all entails. I'll turn to him, who has a little bit more experience with the background.
So I lived in Europe for 4 years, and in Europe it's very common to see your smiling face going through an intersection in a nice glossy photo that the law enforcement sends you. I don't believe that photocop's coming to Utah anytime soon. I think for the reasons that the individual who wrote this, it's based on this idea of facing your accuser. You can't do that when there's been a photo taken of you and your car. The Highway Patrol will have to begin enforcing the front license plate before photocop would ever be able to be used. And they currently are choosing not to really do that unless they stop you for another offense. So I don't see it coming in the state soon. And then I wanted to just say something real quick based on what Mike McKell said about the press. I'll just give you an example of how this was working. Last session, we're in a very contentious hearing, and I'm writing some personal notes on my desk, and all of a sudden I see a camera right here by my ear, and this guy is zeroing in on my personal notes, and it was just very distracting and almost felt invasive. So I will say I love the press. What makes America so great is free press. But I think there have to be some limits on their access. I think an average citizen would feel abused by having somebody do that to them, and so did we. And so I think that's the genesis of this. we love the press even when they don't love us because we understand it's a basic freedom in America. So we're going to continue to be open with the press, but we just think there need to be some limits, just like personal space limits.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Do you guys know is there an actual photocopy bill?
Is there what?
Is there an actual photocopy bill?
Negative. I don't know of any photocopy.
I mean, I'm handicapping that one at 1,000 to 1. It doesn't pass, but
Yeah.
I don't know that there is an actual bill.
No, don't know of a bill.
There might be. Whoever asked the question, let us know. We don't see everything. Oftentimes, bills like that just get held up in Rules Committee, and we never see them. But I'll buy. I know Scott paid for breakfast this morning. We'll come back and I'll pay for lunch if that passes.
I think we have one more question that is for Representative Welton and Representative Thurston to answer. And then if there's no other questions, I mean, if you have one, hold it up. If there isn't any, then we will go to our final. But you two can answer that one that you got.
Okay, I'll read it. It says, it's clear that you have a lot to do to consider all the bills that come before you. We know you also have jobs and families and other responsibilities. How do you keep up with everything during the session? I jokingly say, cry a lot. No, just kidding. My first year, I tried to drive home every night to Payson, and I realized that 2 hours was really important to read bills, especially as a new legislator. I don't know everything, and so I've got to read all the bills start to finish to make sure that I understand what they are. Some of these more veteran faces up here have read them enough times that they can just go to the highlighted pieces that are changing. They can probably look at those. So that's kind of hard. We rely on each other as well too, like to a certain extent. I talk to Representative Lyman and Thurston all the time, who sit right next to me, and I'm always told to vote no on everything, and so I vote no on a lot of things. But we find people that we have similar ideologies that we trust and we research, but there's a lot of reading that goes on. There's a lot of sharing of notes and saying, hey, what is this, what have you read in this bill? And then also, family's hard. Like, family is sometimes the first casualty of politics. And so I get excited to come home on the weekends and see my family and spend some more time with them and refresh and recharge my batteries so I can go back and serve you well.
I'm in the same boat. It's from my house to the Capitol in traffic is about an hour and 10 minutes in the morning. When I come home, it's faster, but in the morning, it's not good. And that's the problem. So if I have to be at the Capitol for an 8 o'clock meeting, that just doesn't work. I physically can't make myself do that. So I go up to Salt Lake on Sunday nights. I leave home about 9 o'clock on Sunday night, and then I'll stay up there until Friday afternoon, Friday evening. Sometimes there's a day in the middle of the week when I can come home. If I don't have an 8 o'clock start the next morning, I can come home. Last week I was able to come home twice. We had that kind of that in-between budget week and policy week, so we were able to do that twice. But I do have a full-time job, and I'm supposed to be putting in 40 hours a week on that one. So the clock has 24 hours, 8 hours for sleep, 18 hours for legislative stuff, and 45 hours for work every day is what it feels like. So it just doesn't add up. And I think that there was a comment, I think, in the Senate ruling, because somebody said, well, sometimes I might have to do some work stuff while I'm in a committee hearing. And it's like, well, should you be doing that? Like, well, I don't see another way of doing it. I get work questions all the time during the day, and sometimes it's time sensitive. I can't wait till 5 o'clock to respond, and so I'll have to pull up my laptop and get some information and send it to somebody. It happens. It's just part of life, and you can't. With a citizen legislature like we have, unless you want to, and you don't, unless you want to start paying people full-time salaries to do legislative work, you have to live with the fact that we all have day jobs, and we have to deal with those. We have to fit it all in, but it's okay. I think after 8 sessions, I've kind of figured it out how to make that all work. Valentine's Day is good. I like that's a good holiday weekend to come home, and then next week we have a double because we get President's Day holiday weekend, so it'll be good. So holidays are look forward to that. If we could get the Lieutenant Governor to create another holiday during the session.
Well,
that'd be great.
Well, I think that we can all say that we really appreciate that time and energy that you all put in. We know it's hard on your families, it's hard on the travel schedule, it's hard to keep up with us, and here you are on Saturday morning, and we really appreciate it. We have one last question for Senator McKell, and then we'll start with you, Representative Burton, and come this way and give us a little wrap-up of if there's something that we didn't ask you that you would like to say, but we'll let Senator McKell go first.
You've got the question?
It's a novel.
I've read comments by legislators say we legislate to the exception sometimes. It seems so much time, effort, and energy is spent legislating a bill that will only affect something very rarely. I realize for the individual who got caught up in the exception, it is a real concern. But when bills sometimes have unintended consequences, is it worth creating the bill? And the answer to that is typically no. I think we do legislate for the exception. And I'm going to rant just a little bit. I'm going to go back to something Representative Welton said about education. There was an issue in the Nebo School District. There was some curriculum that was a little weird, and that parent did the right thing, and that parent went to the district, and it was immediately removed. One of my concerns this session is I think we are unnecessarily burdening our teachers in ways we shouldn't, and it goes back to CRT, and we are the big authoritarian state government, and because we're concerned about CRT, and we should be concerned about CRT, but we do have a local process. We're sitting where the Nebo School Board meets, and we had a situation in Nebo where there was a concern, and that parent went to the district. I don't think it's my job as a state legislator to come in and with a hard hand, we're going to set the curriculum. That's not constitutional. Article 10, Section 3 is very clear that the supervision of schools is with the school board, and sometimes we do that on a lot of issues. I think the hard hand of government comes in. I try not to. There are issues that we do need to do that. But I hope it's rare that we do that. You'll see stories in the news. Unfortunately, a legislator will get a speeding ticket in the wrong place, and all of a sudden the legislator will open a bill. We are normal people. We get upset just like you do. We're a lay legislature, and sometimes things happen in our life, and we think we've got to open a bill file. I hope we can get. That's why there's 75 in the House, 29 in the Senate. So we're a check and balance to each other to make sure that doesn't happen. But great question. Thank you.
All right, with that, let's start, Representative Burton,
Okay.
and our wrap-up.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I think we talk about the Utah way all the time, and I'm very grateful to be a resident of the state of Utah. I love this state. For that reason, we try to be rational. We try to think things through very well. We balance our budget. We just like you have to do with your own checkbook. And I love that about Utah. It is not the norm. It is not the norm in the country today. And so I think the hope for our nation is really in state legislatures that are rational, that think things through, that slug out the tough issues, but that ultimately, at the end of the day, balance the budget. And so I think that's what I love about Utah. We're looking at generational investments for Utah and the future of Utah, and really looking 25, 30 years out to try and make the right decisions so that your children and grandchildren can enjoy the same things that we love about Utah. So thank you for your input. It is priceless to us. I can't tell you how much I learned from you and the phone calls and the emails and the texts. I've changed bills because I've gotten input from you. And so please know that you have access to us. And please reach out to us when you have questions or you're troubled by something, and we'll get you answers. Thank you.
Thank you for all being here this morning. When I first walked into the House of Representatives, they put all the freshman legislators on the very front row, to keep us in line and keep an eye on us, make sure we don't do something really dumb. And so as I'm sitting there on the very first row, I look up to the Speaker of the House just in front of me every day, and above the Speaker of the House, there's a Latin phrase that I love. It means the people's house. And so when I'm sitting there, I'm realizing I am here to be able to represent 44,000 people, the great people that live in Springville, Mapleton, and Spanish Fork. And that is what the privilege of this, of being able to be involved, is to be able to serve and to be able to help. And because it is the people's house, we all collectively work together. And so as you have questions and as you have concerns and you have ideas and recommendations, I have loved how you've reached out to me in the thousands of emails and the texts and the phone calls and coming up and being able to meet with me, because I don't have all the answers to all of the issues on all of the bills, but I know that collectively we'll be able to figure this out and be able to work together. Also, it's been a privilege to be able to also be transparent and accountable to everyone that I'm supposed to be able to represent. And so if by chance you don't have or not receiving my weekly legislative report of what's happened in the session, I send it out on Friday evenings, as well as every bill that I voted on the entire week with my voting record there. Please let me know. I'd be happy to be able to share that with you, because it's important to be transparent and to be able to be accountable to you of how I'm serving and representing you. And I'd like to be able to invite all of you to come up. This has been an inspiring experience, and I hope that you'd be able to come up, and I'd be honored to have you come and sit on the House floor with me during voting, to come to participate in a committee and to be involved so we can collectively make our communities even better for our families and our businesses and our residents. So thank you for being here.
One of the things that I have been asked by the governor to do that I forgot to mention is be the liaison between he and myself and the legislature. So for our administration, I am that point person. Of course, we have a whole bunch of team members that help us with everything, and it's been an interesting experience being on this side, being on the executive side rather than legislative side. I am so passionate about the legislature and the legislative process and how important it is and how unique it is. And no, we don't always get it right. And if Senator Hinkins were here, he would say that that's why we have next year. We can come back and fix the mistakes that were made this year. And it's true to a degree, because we're all human. But one thing that Representative Thurston said that I just really want to highlight is everybody in the legislature has a day job. And I mean, I didn't when I was in the legislature, and I couldn't believe the people who did. It is a monumental effort, and my hat's off to all of them. I love these guys, and I'm so grateful for them and their desire to be accountable and to be transparent and to serve you. So thank you for the opportunity that you have given me over the years, and just want to thank these guys for what they do.
Thank you. Isn't it great having our Lieutenant Governor here? I mean, it's just fantastic. You can clap. Let's clap for her. You should. I had a moment just yesterday where I looked up and realized what we were all about again. It's always good to remember why we're there. And last year kind of stunk on Capitol Hill, and it was and when I say that, we didn't have the public there the same way, and it was just harder not having the kids and members of the community. So yesterday I'm sitting in the Senate, and I look to my left, and I'm going to read names. I had Janelle Youngs, teacher in Nebo School District. Rick would know her. We had Sherilyn Woodhouse. Rick would know her. Charles Honasek, and then Matt Hargraves. And I started thinking through all the people from our community that have been up there to help in the process. It's a team effort. Paul Dayton back there came and spent time with me this week. I've seen all the mayors from this area all during the session. Carrie's there all session long, and it takes a community to get it right. And I know we get it wrong from time to time, but it was one of those moments where you realize we really are there to do the people's work. And it is important what we do, but come get engaged in the legislative process. This session has been much better than last session. It's been fun to see our friends and people that we care about back on Capitol Hill. I serve with some incredible people, and just thank you for your participation.
It's great to have Steve White in the legislature, but one of the things I miss about Francis Gibson, that Steve's going to have to figure out, he would always come to this meeting and he would have a little moment where he'd say, we passed a bill that did what? And I've got one for you this week. We passed a bill out of committee this week that allows parents to have accent marks on their children's names on the birth certificate. Who knew? Well, I didn't know you couldn't do that. So I was sort of surprised about that one. So if you have a child, there were lots of examples that they gave, but one of my colleagues has a child, her name is Penelope, and the way that they spell Penelope, there should be an accent mark on the E to tell you which E is the Penelope. And apparently right now she went to register her child's birth and was told, no, you can't do that. It has to be something else. Another guy had a child they wanted to give him the middle name Leon because his wife was from Mexico and that's the thing. But they couldn't, so his name is Leon instead of Leon. And so allowing those accent marks, and Representative Welton and I had a great conversation about that bill. It was a lot of fun. But now you know. So I'm sure that bill's going to pass, unless the Senate messes it up. But you might. But so there now you know. I think it's something that it's just kind of one of those things like one constituent had a problem and went to their legislator and got that problem fixed. But in the process, it's going to benefit probably hundreds or maybe thousands of parents who. And I'm one of those. I have a daughter who has an accent on her name, so it's like, okay, now we can go back and get a new birth certificate with her name on it.
Okay, coming at the end, you just basically say ditto and we're done. No, I am very grateful for the men and women up here. They've taken me under their wing as a freshman legislator and said and helped me talk through issues and figure out the history of bills and where they were at and where they are now and what they know. I love talking to constituents. What's that?
And where the no button is.
And yes, I learned where the no button is. But I learned so much from talking to people. One of the things that I love is to talk to people and to understand as many points of view. Sometimes people think that listening means that I'm agreeing with them, and so just know that I like to listen, and then I will take all that information, synthesize it, and make a decision right there. But I want to hear what you have to say, and I believe that we come to better decisions when we have that conversation. I often have said in my community that one of the reasons we have the greatest governing document of the world, the Constitution, is because you had Federalists and Anti-Federalists who came together, or essentially people with differing point of views, and they talked about the issues and they worked through them until we came up with something that we had the Constitution and we had the Bill of Rights that had freedom of speech and right to bear arms and to assemble and all those other things. And so the conversations are really important. Arthur Brooks said we don't need to disagree less, we need to disagree more, but we need to disagree better. So we need to be in these discussions. We need to have differing views, we need to share those differing views, but we just need to make sure that we're doing it in a manner that moves us forward, because we have great people in this state and great people in our community. So pleasure to serve, pleasure to be with you today, and look forward to chatting with you afterwards.
Thank you. We again want to thank our legislators for being here two Saturdays during the session to come and engage with us, and today especially for our Lieutenant Governor being here with us. We really appreciate this, and to all of you. I know they appreciate all of your attendance today at these events that we hold, so that you can give your opinion, that you can ask your questions directly, and it's important to engage. In case you don't know, there is the website le.utah.gov. You can look up any of their bills. You can find their email or their phone number on that site. You can listen. You don't have to drive to the Capitol if you want to listen to one of those on Monday. If you want to listen to the committee hearing on death penalty, you can log on at home and listen, or not at work. We won't advocate for that, but you can log on and listen to any committee hearing live, or you can listen to it later archived. And so they've done a really good job at transparency on the ability for you to connect to them and with them. So again, I appreciate their efforts here today. I wanted to, as this is our last Bills and Bagels of the session, I wanted to again express our appreciation to Superintendent Rick Nielsen for allowing us to host our events here, to Scott Barlow for providing a wonderful breakfast from Revere Health. There's a little bit of leftovers. We also want to thank Travis with SF-17 for coming both times and recording it for viewing later or viewing on their channel, SF-17 channel. And also for Michael setting up the room here for the district. He comes very early and gets all of this set up, and we really appreciate all the work that you've done on our behalf as well. So with that, we will meet twice next session. So be looking next year for some additional invitations to come, and through our business community, the three chambers that represent the South County as well as your city. So The legislators, if they have time, will stay after and talk with you about individual questions if there was something you wanted to ask that wasn't asked. With that, thank you so much for being here.